So this is the fourth in a series of videos about how to present with genuine impact, to convey a message that will actually make a difference to your audience. We know what we're going to do in the first 30 seconds. We know how we're going to purposefully connect with that audience. We've thought about how we will not just be, but come across as authoritative and passionate. And this week I want to think about what we can do to make sure that our message really sticks. How can we keep it absolutely simple? For me, simplicity is about having one message. And I'm going to keep coming back to that again and again and again to remind people, but I'm going to do it in different ways, creatively, so it's not boring. And you cannot now miss what my take-home message is. And yeah, I am going to talk about other things, but there's a little map that I've got in my mind, which I'm making very explicit to you, which shows you how that links back to my message so that you'll remember the key message. And then from there, you can remember, yeah, he said that and the next thing. Brilliant. So, one key memorable message, and that is your first task. And for me, as a researcher, that is the biggest problem, because I've normally got way more stuff that I want to present than I've got time for. And already it's a challenge to work out how I cut this down to 15 minutes. But you're saying now, even more than that, I need to just have one thing that you have to convey. Well, I would suggest yes, because actually, if I haven't done that, then I'm potentially wasting my time going through all these things, trying to cram it in, and actually people go away thinking, yeah, what was that about? I can't remember. Complete waste of time. So what is the one message, that one research finding, that one implication, action, recommendation, insight that you want people to go away and think about? And make sure you've got that clear in your mind. And we're going to connect that to our purpose in our first 30 seconds. We're going to conclude with that right at the end as we come back to our home position, if you've listened to the other videos. And we've got that crystal clear. And if it's clear in our minds, then chances are it will be clear in the minds of the people that we are talking about, we are talking to. Now, I'm going to repeat this in lots of different ways. So I'm going to tell you a story. Ultimately, the take-home message from the story is my take-home message. I'm now going to give you some research findings, and yeah, I can see the evidence for that. I'm now going to talk about the implications of this for policy or for practice, or how a business might implement this. And yeah, that's the same message that you talked about at the beginning, and that your evidence is pointing us towards. Interesting. And I'm going to use some other ways as well, which I'll come on to in a moment. But I'm constantly coming back and reminding you, yeah, that's the message. And here's another way that you can look at it, and another way. And yeah, you cannot now miss this. But I'm not just being repetitive. Now, I'm going to have some secondary messages. I'm going to have a point 2 and a point 3. And there's going to be a short aside, 2.2 perhaps. But each time as I move on to that point, I explain how it links to my core points. In this case, presenting with impact, or in the case of my trainings on impact, this might be the core message of empathy. And so now I have this absolutely crystal clear. I understand that what works and what is going to work time efficiently is I need to become a more empathic researcher. I've got that in my head. And now, yeah, he gave me this tool. It was, what was it, stakeholder analysis or something like that? And he explained that, when he explained that first take-home message, he told me he was going to give me a tool that would enable me to systematically put myself in other people's shoes. What was that tool? Yeah, it was stakeholder analysis. That's what it was. And then I remember from there, I now know who's interested in my research, but of course there was a missing link here. I needed to work out how I got from someone who was interested to a benefit, and I needed to create a pathway. And oh yeah, that was the impact planning template. And yeah, great. And so you've got this map, and you've made it clear to everyone all the way through. This is how it links back to the point before. And as I'm describing my my impact planning template, I'm also explaining how, again, this enables us to take those steps of empathy, to put ourselves in the shoes of our stakeholders or publics, to not only think of messages that might resonate, but to think of benefits that they might actually perceive as being a genuine benefit to them. And now in their shoes, thinking about the pathways, the activities, the engagement that will actually enable this to work for someone like that compared to someone like that. Great. So you've created that map, you're making this really explicit, and yeah, I might just remember that one thing. But now I've remembered that, you know what, that was the other thing, and that was the other thing, and you've got a mechanism now to remember much more than your one thing. So you don't need to feel quite so bad about the fact that it feels like I'm telling you to only do one thing. You can get more across. My final message now is to think about some more creative ways that you can make that one thing stick. So yeah, I've got a story. And it's not just any old story. As I described a couple of videos ago, I'm having a story which is POV, to use the hideous acronym. It's personal, it's unexpected, it's visual, it's visceral in some shape or form. And now, yeah, that has power. Yeah, you know what? I can't remember anything, but I remember that crazy story you told me, and I'm telling this to my mate as I come out and get home. I heard this crazy story, and yeah, and I remember, and he's asking, well, why was he talking about that? And actually, I can remember exactly why. And yeah, this was the message, and it was really interesting. We should really think about this thing. So you've got something that will stick, and you've chosen a story on purpose that will stick and be memorable, but will also open channels of empathy and work across these principles that I'm talking to you about. I might want to use an image, so some kind of really challenging, powerful, inspiring, or just apt image that instantly conveys, yeah, that's what you're talking about. So, for example, in my trainings, I try to use the image of my daughter. It's just my shoes, but you can see some small legs sticking out of them. My daughter wearing my shoes in my front garden. And I show that image to make the point that there's one thing you need to remember, or you can sum up this entire book or this entire course in one word, and that word is empathy. And as I say that, an image of my daughter wearing my shoes comes up on the screen, and by the time I've got to the word empathy, the word empathy has appeared at the bottom of the screen. And then if it's not obvious to you, I explain. Of course, by definition, empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of other people, thinking what they think, feeling how they feel, understanding their hopes, their fears, so that we can do research, not just for people, let alone on people, but with people. Great, you get my point. But that image already is sticking in the head. That's a weird thing. I wasn't expecting to see something like that. It's quite a powerful image. It's been taken by a professional photographer. And yeah, that's what it's about. That image of the shoes, putting myself in the other people's shoes. Yes, empathy. Great, I've remembered it. I might also use metaphor. So I can use a visual metaphor, and you could argue that the shoes, in fact, are a visual metaphor. Also, in my training, I use a metaphor of an infectious smile, this idea that good ideas are like an infectious smile because they spread through the warmth of human connection. And actually what I'm doing is, again, I'm talking about a relational approach to impact, which of course is bringing you back to my main point. Again, it's about people, it's about trust, it's about relationships. And to do that, I've got a video. I went down to London, we drew a sign with the word smile on it, and we walked down the street and grinned at random passers-by. And so it's a powerful visual metaphor. Or I might use a metaphor of two gentlemen trying to fix a Russian furniture store sign. And you can see one of them is being held over the brink by the other by his ankles. And very clearly, I can now illustrate the kind of relationships we're talking about. They need to be two-way. You're going to have to engage with each other to work out what's the nature of the problem, how are we going to solve that, and they have to be trusting, because one of them's decided to trust the other to allow him to be dangled over the edge to fix it. And now, of course, in the context of this, we've got the right tool for the job. He's got a screwdriver. And we now then move on in the course to tools, but I'm able to now use this metaphor to remind us that as we go into these tools, I'm going to keep reminding you how these tools don't just save you time, but help you to take a relational approach to impact that enables you to systematically empathize with your audience. And so that beating heart of the impact agenda alongside the tools that enable us to do it in the cracks between our day job. When you've designed your talk to have a story, an image, a metaphor, something like this that will really stick, then instantly you can remember what it is that you're talking about. I'm going to finish with a story, so I said I'm going to do this for each of these. And this is partly to open a channel of empathy with you, because I know that you will probably have had similar experiences, and we all struggle from time to time with presentation skills. And for me, as I've just said, stories often convey our messages way more powerfully than anything else. They stick. And hopefully you'll remember at least one of these stories, and there'll be a take-home message from that story that will direct you back to the core message that I've got in this, which I hope you'll see is coming up week after week. Connect, empathize. When you do that effectively, your message sticks, it conveys at a deep level, things happen as a result. So this sadly is not me as an early career researcher. This is me now. I'm doing pretty well for myself in terms of my career, and it's another catastrophic presentation fail. So I had a PhD student, Jasper Kenter. He's now an associate professor at University of York, and he, as a PhD student, came to me and said, "I think we could get this proposal, £250,000." National ecosystem assessments, it's UN government funded with the research councils, properly prestigious, because it links to my PhD. And actually, I'm connected to all of the key people who are working on this stuff through my networks. Genuinely, Mark, I think we could do this. So I said to him, well, look, I'm happy to kind of be the figurehead on this and to be the PI to lead this, as long as you promise me that you will never let me stand on a stage by myself. You're with me, and I make it very clear to everyone from the outside that we are equals in this. And whilst you might only be a PhD student, you are also the project manager on this, and I will make it clear to everyone we're jointly leading this. And the idea is actually yours. You're the brains behind this whole thing. And so he was, of course, yeah, sounds like a good deal. But as the project went on, there were, of course, various meetings where, yeah, only one of us could make it. And I now had to go to a meeting. And as I understood it, this was a meeting of all of the leads for the different projects that they'd funded. And we were all coming together to exchange where we were at in terms of the science, social science, and the arts and humanities research that we were doing. And I got there, and I prepared where we are on this, and I was going to focus on the stuff that I'd been leading, which I knew plenty about, to make the most of the fact that it was me who was there. And when I arrived, sadly late because I'd had a massive travel delay, I walked in and there was 100 people there. This was not what I was expecting. And I'm looking around at these people and I don't recognise any of them. And oh yeah, I recognise a couple of people over there, and they're from the government. And I then looked through the participant list, and this was in fact a stakeholder meeting. So I'm realising now I've got to go right back to first principles and explain the whole rationale for why we're doing this and how we're doing this. And I need to explain Jasper's part in this and some quite deep cutting edge economics, and I'm not an economist. And so I'm now thinking to myself, right, I've got about half an hour until I'm up. I'm going to sit and scribble in the margins of the agenda the key points I need to convey to take you from ground zero right up to where we are at the moment. And this is stuff I'm not great on. I'm a bit shaky. This is the reality. And in this case, it came across rather apparently, because I stood up there and I started talking. And the first bit I'd kind of got, yeah, this is pretty simple. This is the context. This is the challenge. This is how we're going to deal with it. And now I then got to the economics and the methods. And of course, I don't have any slides prepared. They've been sent in advance. And I've only got the high level stuff because I wasn't properly prepared. And I realise at this point that I can't actually read my notes. They're very small, and they're on a table down there. And so, yeah, let's try and remember this stuff. So yeah, I'm now trying to go from memory. So this is how it works, and this then goes to this, and here's the theory, and you know what? No, that's not quite right. So I'm just picking up my notes now, and I'm now trying to hold my notes, and I realise that I'm kind of shaking, and so this is not aiding me being able to read this, and it's also showing to everyone that I'm a bit shaky and nervous about this. So yeah, okay, yeah, that's the thing. Okay, great, I've remembered it. Put it down, stop myself shaking, hold my hands to also stop myself looking so nervous, and I'm trying again. And at this point, I look, and one of my close colleagues from one of the other projects is looking at me, and there's this look of empathy, which is just going, "Oh, Mark, you're dying, and I can't believe you're doing this. What a disaster, and I feel for you." And that look of empathy in his eyes made me instantly realise he mirrored to me what the rest of that audience were thinking. Who is this guy? He's dying in front of us all. This is really embarrassing, and please don't do this to yourself. And sure enough, yeah, there we go. I died in front of all of these people. We've got a problem here. Again, I recovered from it, but it was a bit of a challenge, managing to go through everything I've learned now to recover from my disastrous introduction. Here we are now, we're on the slides, this is the stuff I know about, and we're safe, and I'm going to stand solid, and I'm going to use lots of very calm body language to look like, yes, I am an expert, kind of, in some stuff, like the stuff I'm now talking about, and yeah, we were okay here. The problem was that it was way, way too complicated. Here was I trying now with no visual aids, without any ability to think about how I might simplify this with a diagram or a metaphor or a story, trying to go through just verbally a load of really complicated stuff that, to be honest, I found really complicated. And if I had managed to work out a way of simplifying this, or just gotten Jasper to do it for me, which would of course been the best solution, then I might have actually enabled that audience to get straight onto that cutting edge with me and retain their confidence in me. So preparation, as I said, is one of the key things that you need in order to get over some of the nerves that you might experience in situations like this. But when you haven't prepared, for me, this is not now about going deep into all the complexities of this. If I've not prepared, then I'm going the other way, and I'm trying to simplify. I'm trying to say, well, here are the basics, and I'm going to speak for less time than I might otherwise do. And you know what? You can come and talk to me about some of the complexity afterwards, but let's just make sure we keep this simple enough to convey something of meaning, rather than to fluff this up with so much complexity that, you know what, I've lost you all. So go out there, simplify, and have fun, because for me, this is the most creative part of the process. I'm now creatively thinking about metaphors, about stories. I'm thinking about my visuals, and you know what? This is great. I enjoy it, and as a result, my audience enjoys it, and as a result, my audience remembers my message. I've kept it simple. Taken it from lots of different angles in the same way. I've created a map. I've got something now that sticks in the mind visually or in some other way. And now you're going from my talk knowing exactly what it is that I need to think about, exactly what that one thing is that I could do, and not forgetting it in the mess of the complexity of what we often do as researchers.